Good morning and welcome to the final session of our District Assembly. Thank you for joining us. We're delighted to announce that over 2,000 people have watched the previous sessions. I find that very, very encouraging. Last year, when we were at the Assembly at Bury St Edmunds, we just had 252 Rotarians attending. And I have thought, I wonder how much was relayed to those clubs when their members went back. Did they put any of those things into action? Now we've reached so many more viewers, several clubs have used the YouTube recording to feature at their Zoom club meetings, sharing the knowledge of our plans and our objectives. Indeed, expanding our reach. 13% of the viewings were from non-Rotarians. The use of the new technology essential to communicate and operate during this pandemic and demonstrating our ability to adapt. An example of Rotary opening opportunities. So today inside District 1080, we have our Rotary Great Britain and Ireland President-elect, Tom Griffin. Following that, I will summarise and recap our district's strategic priorities and objectives, including our club action plan for the coming Rotary year. Then the district chairs that have presented at the previous sessions, plus Tom Griffin, will join me to answer questions. I now would like to ask Tom Griffin to start his presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. District Assembly is about looking forward, about planning for the future. But these days, aren't we just learning how difficult it is to predict the future, to envisage what the future will look like? When DG Jonathan and I attended the Rotary International Assembly in San Diego back in January, we had no idea that the world, and Rotary with it, would be transformed in the way we've seen in the last few weeks. And yet, even in the midst of the kind of disruption to our normal lives we're currently seeing, certain things remain valid. Rotary is a major force of good in the world. The world would be a much poorer place if Rotary wasn't there. As Rotarians, we need to do what we can to secure the long-term health and strength of our organisation. Those were essentially the themes of my talk to the 2020-21 district governors and assistant governors when we met in Warwick in February. And despite everything which has happened since, they remain valid today. This year's president of our I, Mark Daniel Maloney, has encouraged us all to grow Rotary, because that way we can better serve the world. So what does that mean? First, it means we need to grow in numbers. And here we face the inescapable fact that over the years in this district, as in the rest of GB&I, our numbers have been shrinking. And not only have numbers been reducing, we've been aging. According to the latest figures I have, in 1080, only just over 2% of our members are aged under 40, only 16% under 60, and over 60% are aged 70 or more. That is not a recipe for growth. And I'm not picking on 1080. The pattern is much the same throughout GB&I, nor for obvious reasons am I picking on the over 70s. Why have we so signally failed to recruit younger members? People say young people aren't interested in volunteering. The time and cost commitments of Rotary put them off. They don't need to join a club to give service. Well, the coronavirus emergency has exploded the first of those points. In England alone, upwards of 750,000 people have come forward to volunteer during the current pandemic. But there is truth in the other 2 points, a truth which has lessons for us. The time and cost commitments of joining a traditional Rotary club are considerable, and much of that is not intrinsic to Rotary. Most of our clubs still meet and socialise in the way people networked and socialised in 1905, and society doesn't work like that anymore. So rather than trying to squeeze people into a way of meeting and doing Rotary, which reflects the early part of the 20th century, we need to be offering younger people who want to give something back into society a 21st century model of Rotary, one which reflects their image, their way of networking and socializing. And that means one of two things. Either clubs have to change, or we need to create new clubs. Now, many clubs are changing because of COVID-19 and meeting in totally different ways. And when the world returns to normal, I don't believe that every club will go back to a weekly lunch or dinner meeting with a meal and a speaker. Of course, some clubs will not want to change, and that's fine. That is their prerogative. But if that's the case, if we want Rotary to survive and grow, we need to be starting new clubs, clubs which meet informally, at a weekend, in a cafe, online, whatever. We need to be able to offer all those people who have recently discovered the joy of volunteering a vehicle for them to continue when COVID-19 is beaten, but one which suits their lifestyles. And remember, a lot of the current volunteering is pretty informal. Once we return to something like the old normal, the bureaucratic rules which probably inhibited some people will reappear. But Rotary will deal with those niggling issues, disclosure and barring, insurance, and so on. That's one of the benefits of joining an organization like Rotary. We need to be working towards ensuring that there is an active, vibrant club in all our significant communities. And think of the communities in 1080 where clubs have closed over the last few years, or whether there was no club. The potential is there. We just need to tap into it. I don't pretend it will be easy, but remember what Ray Berman said a couple of weeks ago on this assembly. You only need a small number to start, and that number can and will grow. But there's another dimension to our membership which we must address. I've talked about the age issue, but we need to look at the whole of our demographics. Diversity is one of Rotary's core values, yet 30 years after women were welcomed into Rotary, only 17% of our membership is female. And in a recent survey, 96% of Rotarians in GB&I identified themselves as white British or white Irish. We are way away from being representative of the ethnic or national origin of the communities we serve. To me, that disconnect between us and the communities we serve in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity and nationality is an existential issue. The second part of growing Rotary is to grow our service, to do more to help those in need. That should flow from being a bigger, younger membership, but we also should be helping ourselves to strive to do more, do better. The Rotary citation has not had a wide take-up in GB&I generally, and particularly in 1080. Yet if clubs set themselves goals, and the citation gives them a ready-made way of doing so, they will encourage themselves to do more, to do better. As Derek Rosswell explained a couple of weeks ago, the new citation is easier and simpler than ever. It sets out 25 areas of success, and to achieve the citation, a club needs to choose the 13 areas which suit its own priorities, set itself a goal in each of those areas, and then achieve those goals. I seriously encourage you to do this. Have a look at the citation pages on the RI website, www.rotary.org, or just Google Rotary citation. There were 4 issues I focused on when I spoke to Warwick in February. And speaking to this district, I hardly need to mention the 3rd, and that is the environment. Just like diversity, so do I believe that Rotary's engagement with and commitment to environmental issues is an existential matter. Too long have we largely ignored them. I am delighted that the trustees of the Rotary Foundation have agreed that the environment will be a 7th area of focus. But as I've said, here I'm preaching to the converted. 1080 has been ahead of the game in this, and Keith Tovey last week addressed what we are doing and can do far better than can I. And finally, I must mention polio. Obviously, much of the proactive work of vaccination has had to be paused during the COVID-19 pandemic, but we must not lose sight of our goal to eradicate this crippling and dreadful disease. Unless it is eradicated everywhere, it can and will come back. We don't need to be reminded these days that fearful communicable diseases are only a plane ride away. We have made a promise to the children of the world that we will end polio. As I have said, some of the work is paused, but the fight will go on, and that fight needs to be funded. So please, when you are thinking about how to allocate your funds for humanitarian service, please don't forget polio. So that's my plea to you. Start as soon as you can to grow our membership and to broaden our diversity. Grow your service too, and use the Rotary citation as a means of helping you to do so. Pick up on Keith Tovey's ideas for helping the environment, and help the Rotary Foundation to end polio. These are difficult times. These are odd times. But incoming RI President Helge Knaak was being prophetic when he chose as his theme for 2020-21, Rotary opens opportunities. The current situation opens up for us a fantastic opportunity to look at ourselves and to look at our clubs, to think seriously about what matters, what's important, and to build a stronger Rotary in 1080 in the coming years. Let's grasp that opportunity with both hands. Stay well, good luck, and enjoy the journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to hear from inside 1080 on the one hand, but also looking at us as part of your new responsibilities from next week. And Tom, I have to say that this plays well into the fact that our strategic plan for the last 5 years has been very much focused on what we started saying last year was we must grow Rotary. And I think you've made that extremely clear. And this week, not this week, but this week in RI, we've got the international convention going on this kind of media that we're using today. And on Wednesday, I attended one of the breakout sessions when it was called Elevating Rotaract. And they announced some breaking news, which I'm going to share with you. Some may have already heard of it, but it's been announced from the point of view that a while ago, Rotaract was now recognized as a proper Rotary club, if you like, whereas before it was
part of RI.
Yes, part of RI. Absolutely, thank you, Tom. And so what they announced, and this is, I don't know if I've got all the facts here, but Rotary clubs will be able to apply for global grants from 2022. Rotaract clubs can be started without a Rotary Club sponsor. Wow. Now, I've heard it particularly from some of my colleagues around the country, where when a new club wants to start up, another club either in the same town or a neighbouring town will throw up their hands in horror and say, no, we can't, we are the club. And in reality, we've got certain towns, Norwich and Cambridge and Ipswich, where we've got more than one club. In fact, even in King's Lynn, we've got more than one club. So they will be allowed to set up. But I feel that this also fits in with one of my objectives with our team, which is to open up many more new style clubs in East Anglia. And Tom also reflected on that. And because we have the situation, the demographic that Tom spoke about, and to get younger people in, they're more likely to join a new club. And the kind of model that I know Robin Raitt is very keen on with this. Robin, could you just unmute and join us while we're talking about Rotaract? Robin, anyway, he's not listening. Here he comes. Here he comes.
It says, if you can hear me, you
hear
cannot
you.
Start your video because your host has stopped it.
Right, okay. Well, can you tell us then, are you keen on helping Rotaract?
All I would say is that, yes, of course I am. I happen to believe in young people. I happen to believe that they are our future. Whether we talk Rotary, the district, national, international, without young people, we are finished.
Yep, okay. Well, I think you stay on, Robin, because one of the other things they announced that they will be, and I know this is in dollars now, but from 2022, Rotaractors will be asked to pay a due, as they call it in America. And the dues will be two sorts of dues. If they're a university type of member, they'll be asked to pay $5 a year per person, okay? And if they are a community-based Rotaract club, rather like our one in Bury St Edmunds, they would be asked to pay $8 a year. And it's kind of ensuring that they feel that they are proper members of RI in part of Rotaract. With that in mind, and also with the other thing that I'm really keen to get going with Keith. Keith, would you be able to join us now? I'll let Keith get his, oh, there he is swift with this. Keith is used to communicating with people all over the world. And Keith has been particularly good this year with having link-ups with Japan, haven't you, Keith? Okay.
With Japan, Australia, and later on, immediately after this, with New Zealand as well.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Keith, if you can, because you, with your knowledge of the University of East Anglia, and in the past we've had a Rotaract club there, do you think that we would be able to look at starting up a club in the university?
I think so. I mean, my contacts now, having retired 10 years ago, obviously are not what they were. But one of the things that was interesting when I was still active, and even for a year or two after I retired, I did have a lot of master students coming through, and actually got 2 or 3 of them to join our Rotary Club for a short period while they were there. They then went back to their own countries and joined Rotary, and I know I got quite a bit of grief at the time saying, oh, the people you bring in from the university are only with us for a year and then they disappear. But in my opinion, we are growing Rotary by actually, it doesn't matter whether they are actually necessarily in District 1080 or elsewhere. And I had suggested that perhaps there ought to be some recognition, perhaps through some form of citation, to a club that does encourage growth in Rotary, but it may be as a transient like that. So yes, I think Rotaract at the university would be an excellent thing to try to promote, but I think that we also need to actually perhaps also look at some other aspects that could happen, particularly the ones who are rather older, who are coming to do master's courses.
Robin, if you recall, when we went to the Bury Rotaract Club recently, and we were talking to the club, But we felt at that point that we ought to get the district involved more seriously. And we did at the exec meeting vote unanimously to have a vacancy or have an appointment of a Rotaractor on the district exec. And also we're looking to try and get 3 champions. Robin, this is your theory. So would you like to explain this on the 3 champions in the different counties?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing in Suffolk, we are very fortunate in that we have Sharon Ridgton from Abbey Club, and she was one of the instigators and mentors for Abbey Rotaract. But she doesn't and isn't in a position where she can take on the whole of the district. So we do have a champion in Suffolk. We'd love to see a champion in Norfolk and a champion in Cambridgeshire. And it's so that clubs can make a referral back to them. So yes, please, anybody who's interested in Rotaract in Norfolk or Cambridgeshire, speak to me. And as I said before, speak to Jonathan. Either or. I'm the nice one, by the way. Now, as far as having somebody on the exec, I think that's absolutely superb. Sadly, I don't think, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn, for all the enthusiasm of the Abbey Club, it was fairly clear when we were there, we need to carefully nurture and help and assist. So for the future, an undoubted yes. At the moment, I'm not sure that we have somebody who would willingly be involved.
I think that's partly because we've only got 1 club.
Yes.
And we really need to do much better than that. And to expand our reach, which is one of our objectives this year, if we can stop the practice that seems to be a problem around the world, is that Rotaract clubs won't be sponsored by clubs because they don't want to get involved, or they do and they interfere. You know, we really shouldn't interfere with Rotaract clubs. They need to be a club in their own right. I think that if there is a parent club, a Rotary club, they're there as support, not to tell them what to do. In the same way that I've said as I've visited clubs this year, that when I come to a club, I am a guest of that club. You know, I'm a Rotarian like everybody else. And I think in the past, it has been the style of some district governors to go and tell them what they've got to do. Now, this is why we're talking in the way we are in this assembly. And Tom has helped us by covering the things that will hopefully go on throughout Rotary Great Britain and Ireland. But in our own district, we have the tools. We are the tools, if you like, to make these things work. And I really want to unlock more people. And I can I ask Ian to join us now. That's a surprise to Ian. Here he comes.
That was a surprise. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, our team building has often been hampered by what's happened in the past. And when we discussed about probably 6 months ago, a response to a past district governor who was saying, why do we rely so much on past district governors in District 1080? And I think it happens all around the country, because they volunteer and they are experienced people. But we've decided, and Anne Geimer as our leader of leadership and training, we are in a program now of recruitment, but that has to start with a succession plan. And I think it's possibly the same problem in clubs, because many clubs have, in certain cases, clubs have given up because they can't persuade anybody to be the president or to be the secretary or be a treasurer. And I think it's like all the things we're trying to do, it should be part of the action plan for clubs to include their team building and their succession plan. And we're also, with Anne, looking at how we train people. You know, there's obviously a training need now to encourage people to use Zoom and that type of technology. But we've got to get away from the point that in the past, people were not allowed to take positions in either the club or the district because they'd only been in Rotary for a little while. Well, Ian and I are an example where I've now done 12 years and Ian is coming out. Are you up for 7 years now, Ian?
6.5.
6.5. It's like when you're a child,
important.
6.5 and you're 8.5 or something like that. And I think we want everybody anybody that's watching this live or later on to understand you do have something to offer our team. And perhaps as we go forward, and some of our council meetings may well be online or a hybrid, we would like to expand our reach from the district team to the clubs and to all our members. Ian, as you're going to be following me in a year's time, how do you see the importance of our team?
Well, I think what you're saying is absolutely right, and you know, for us to go forward and to be attractive from the point of view of new membership, then you know the sort of leadership that we have has to reflect that, and it's important for us to be able to use the experience and skills that we've had in Rotary overall. I mean, this district, but Rotary overall, and use those skills to the best, but also to bring new blood on at the same time. And it's not easy mixing those two together, but that's what we, you know, that is what we need to be able to do. So yes, we need to sort of, you know, look for new people to come through, but actually to make use of the, you know, the experience that's there as well, to help them to grow quickly, as I've had. I mean, you know, I've had you know, phenomenal help from so many, you know, past district governors and long-standing Rotarians in this district in my journey so far, which has only been 6.5 years.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, the excitement about the environment, and it's interesting that I won't mention the guy's name, but a president who's coming to the end of his service in a Norwich club has written asking if he could get involved with the district, and I think that's fantastic. That's just what we want, and he's excited about the environment. So I dare say Keith will welcome him in, because when you think about when you join Rotary, we join Rotary for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons we do is we want, even if we are 60 or 70, we still want to learn, and we can learn new skills. You know, when a shy person joins a club and is asked to, for the first time, to stand up and say grace or something like that, that they may be nervous, they may be very confident, but all these skills is important that we can learn from each other. I think I don't really want to leave Robert and Derek sitting quietly in their rooms without being able to join us, because I've got something to ask both of them. Robert Lubbock and Derek Rothwell, could you unmute and join us? Hello, Derek. And hello, Robert.
Hello.
While I'm on, hello, Robert. Okay. While we're on skills and things now, Robert, you've been very involved with the speakers. Would you like to just reinforce how that can help Rotarians as well with the new alliance we have?
Yeah, well, it's something I've been passionate for some time, and because I'm also a member of the Toastmasters International, I thought there was probably a gap in Yarmouth to form a new club, and it would be a Rotary speakers group. And sadly, we've only had 3 meetings because of then COVID-19 came in. But what has happened there is that we have got people from a great range of diversity coming into the club, a doctor, a pharmacist, but both from Asian backgrounds. And the really excitement and buzz, the club was growing, and suddenly we had to go into the lockdown. And it's vibrant, and how we're going to work with Rotary is going to be of a challenge, but it's achievable. And I'm quite excited about it, and it will be a satellite club with my club. But we've got young members as well. And I don't want to quote from a young member when I told her that we had to go into a lockdown situation for a little while. She said that she had gained so much in a short space of time, and she'd miss it. And she really was passionate and wanted a commitment from me that club would come back. And I am pleased to tell you that we have a social distancing meeting on Wednesday night in Galston with our steering group to move the process forward. But what I've done there is I've grasped an initiative with Toastmasters, with speakers, and it's something different. Now, clearly there are challenges ahead how we work with it. We will look at projects, but it's an exciting time for me. And I'm working with Toastmasters of Norwich, who have supported this, because there is no speakers club in the Great Yarmouth area. It could be something that other clubs in our IBI could look at, but certainly the partnership with Toastmasters is exciting. The only thing we are now waiting for, and I'm in talks with RI and Toastmasters, we're waiting for them to formulate a special training program for Rotary. That's the deal. And that will be important, because when people come into the Speakers Club, and we have a consultant from the James Paget who's passionate about being part of the steering group after COVID-19 has rescinded, he wants to get this up and running. He is like me, we do need that training program. Hopefully when things settle down, we will get it. But what Tom said about diversity, young people, giving something different is all there in that package. And I'm really quite excited. I'm just hoping we're in too long before we can meet face to face. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. And I think as well, this is another potential for getting new members, and it could work both ways. And Derek, now I've got one of our priorities this year is to increase our impact, and also linked with the fact that we've found in many surveys that people like to join Rotary and are likely to stay in Rotary if there are good projects going on. And one of the things that comes under increasing our impact is the program that's widely known about eradicating polio, is how we leverage the legacy of that. And I guess that, you know, the way that we can go forward, Derek, would enable us to do more things. And there's the opportunity maybe with vaccines, if we get a vaccine for the COVID-19, that we've probably got people all around the world that have the skills to go and do that. So really, Derek, my question for you is, how do you see this as a way of helping us to get giving up a little bit, and also let people understand that we still need to finish off with the polio? You need to unmute, Derek.
Yeah, going for that trap, didn't I? We've been working with polio for such a long time now, and we see the progress that has been made, which is absolutely tremendous. But we also see the gap that we have to cross in order to eradicate the disease entirely. Rotary has been at the forefront of helping the various institutions, one, focus on polio, and two, to assist in how we deal with vaccinations. And Rotary has been providing some of the enabling resources to get vaccines to the right places at the right time. Now, it's one thing to do that and be successful in doing it. It's another thing to tell the world this is what we're achieving. And I feel that we haven't exploited the success of polio to the extent that we could do. So that's something that we need to work on. It's a very vital part of the picture of what Foundation does. And that is not just simply doing the project, but also telling people about that project, which is a tool for bringing in members as well, when people see the good work that Rotary does.
Thank you. Keith, I noticed you would like to say something about polio.
Sorry. Yes, indeed. I know one or two people have heard about this in district, but back in the 1950s, I went swimming in Gosford Green swimming pool in Coventry, where my grandmother lived. 2 or 3 weeks later, I was swimming in my hometown of Southend-on-Sea, and I was taken ill, and I was found to be with a sort of a potential polio victim. A little bit later, I was actually invited as one of only 200 children worldwide to test the Salk vaccine. And so I've had quite a long issue with polio myself, having been a potential person catching it and at the pioneering stage. And so it's my objective to see polio eradicated within my lifetime.
Thank you.
Can I just say something, DG? Because it just links to a question actually about this, and for what Derek was saying. I mean, one of the questions is, or sort of statement questions, is that actually aren't people more interested in supporting causes rather than clubs nowadays? I think we've also had that from one or two of the Together talk sessions where we've seen that as well, and actually, you know, the promoting more of of what foundation is doing, supporting, you know, the work in polio and supporting what clubs are doing. It's a major tool for us to be able to you know, to show what we do and cause an interest for people, because they would, you know, perhaps rather support what we're doing than actually, you know, being in a group of people that just meets for something to eat or whatever.
I've always seen a club as being an enabler for the good work that Rotary will do. So it's the good work. It's a project which I think is important, which we need to sell to people, rather than the fact that there happens to be a group of older men and older women who are meeting every week. It's not the meeting every week. It's the fact that we are supporting these projects, which really is the thing which is doing good in the world. Okay.
Ian, in your sort of speciality of public image, and as a regional coordinator for Rotary International in Great Britain and Ireland, I mean, we need to tell people what we're doing. I think what Derek has just said and the example that Keith gave us, we need to spread that. I know that the expo that would have happened this year was very much focused on getting volunteering from outside of Rotary to understand what we're doing. But I mean, we had a very good presentation from our guest speaker last week, Ian, and would you just like to elaborate on how we need the different types of way we can get the message out about what our clubs are doing for foundation and all projects, really?
Yeah, well, as we said the week before last, and from a, you know, Rotary Great Britain and Ireland strategic point of view, as well as what we're trying to do here in the district, is that foundation and you know, telling the foundation story and what we do from foundation, you know, is a really important part of the membership process. And then what clubs do and what clubs do at local levels is part of what we're trying to achieve, because actually, you know, people, I think the majority of, you know, our members were probably introduced, you know, to a club by someone else. You know, they didn't see an advert, they didn't see a website, they didn't see, you know, something and say, oh, do you know what, I've desperately got to go along and join those people. You know, they were introduced by, you know, somebody else. So, you know, in Berman's terms, you know, member gets member. But as part of that process, you know, if you're talking to somebody about Rotary and they go, what's that? And you've got to start right at the beginning. That's a, you know, that's a long haul that you've got to go through to get somebody to understand what Rotary is before they get interested. Whereas, you know, if you can say, you know, well, I've just been to, you know, a Rotary event of some sort, and they say, Rotary, I've heard of that, can you tell me more? Then you're a long way down the road. You know, you've made some progress. So, you know, that's what I feel we should be doing. That's the process. And, you know, part of, you know, telling people much more about what we do from, you know, with you know, one of the largest charities in the world, foundation, and the things that we're achieving and the changes that we're making, both, you know, at a world level and also at just a, you know, a local community level, you know, is critical to the membership process. And then, you know, taking that further, of course, you know, we start getting more members, and strange enough, we get more money, and then Derek has more money in the coffers to give back to the club for more, you know, for more projects. So, you know, the spiral down becomes the spiral up. So, you know, we certainly see public image as a critical part of, you know, creating that, you know, that awareness, and that's what we want to help, you know, each and every club and each and every member to be able to do. And part of that with the media is actually, you know, telling the story that people are going to be interested in, and putting the human side to it, because that's what came out from what Sean was telling us in his presentation, that, you know, what the media that as we know it is interested in is the human side of stories. They're not interested in, you know, big checks being given, but it's what's the difference that money is making locally. And I think the other important, you know, factor that he brought across was that, and I think the word is, you know, we are gatekeepers of the news now because of this technology. Actually, you know, we can produce the news stories that we want to produce, and, you know, national newspapers and you know, programs like Look East and whatever, you know, their people are sitting there monitoring social media, and they're monitoring hashtags to see what comes up. So, you know, we have the opportunity to actually get our message out there in, you know, in the press.
Thank you, Ian. Another area that we've got to do is increase our ability to adapt. And we've seen many clubs successfully using Zoom. But I also feel that we need to be guardians of those who are not using new technology. And it could be a number of reasons. It may be they can't have the internet or don't have a computer. But I think we mustn't lose sight of, you know, we want youth, but we also want people who are very good Rotarians, maybe at the twilight of their Rotary life, that need to be helped. And I feel that some clubs I've heard about are being quite good at this, where, one example, somebody is going to socially distance and help a Rotarian to how to use Zoom. You know? And I know that you could say to a techo, well, just go on to Zoom and Google Zoom and it will tell you how to use it. But it's sometimes about confidence. And somebody was saying in a different meeting I was in, where it's often the case that people are scared of getting it wrong and they don't want to be embarrassed by it. And so the care that we have, and I think it's one of the clubs has appointed somebody to look after welfare in their club. And part of doing the welfare is actually making sure that people aren't being forgotten, particularly the lonely ones. And the other thing I think is that to find a way to grow Rotary where we started is to let more and more people know about it, including our own members. And I am encouraged that we have a lot more viewings than we would if we had a physical assembly. And I'm beginning to think that perhaps assemblies going forward could always be this way. But I also feel on the opposite side that the district conference needs to be a face-to-face where it can. And for those who are unsure, the conference has been postponed and from this year. And in fact, Potters are not going to open for the foreseeable future. But for those that have had bookings there, they've all been contacted now, and many people have just put their deposits forward for the full year. So the plan is to move it a full year. It will be at the beginning of Ian's year. So, and it's very exciting. But I think the difference between Assembly, which we're doing now, Assembly is all about focusing on our action plans for our clubs, for our district, and for, in Tom's case, for Rotary Great Britain and Ireland. We all need to be sharing this same plan, which we largely are doing. And I'll remind us what it is. It's to increase our impact, expand our reach, enhance participant engagement, and increase our ability to adapt. We then should unlock these new fantastic opportunities. And as Holger said, we will open opportunities to grow Rotary. And we want to do that in East Anglia. And I still believe that, as an American club that I went to last year said, that there should be another part of the four-way test, and is it fun? Now it's down to us to make it fun. So let's go off and make Rotary fun. Okay, so that is I'm not having a speech, but that's it pretty much. Ian, are there any questions that we ought to consider now from anybody, or have we covered most things?
Well, that just probably a couple of questions that might be useful just to put in, because there was quite a lot of questioning around when we were talking about Rotaract, just going back to that, and setting up new clubs, and it's probably you know, a question to Tom really. Will the chartering number of 20 members remain? Is that going to be something which, you know, might be reviewed? Do you have a sort of a, you know, behind the scenes idea of what might be being talked about as to whether, you know, a club has to wait until it gets to 20 members to be chartered?
The 20-member rule is in the Rotary International bylaws, and the only way that can be changed is at the Rotary International Council on Legislation, which happens every 3 years. The next one is in 2022. I haven't heard any proposal to change that, and the number has been debated at Council on Legislation 3 or 4 times over the last couple of decades. I think the key point to make is that although you need 20 to charter a standalone Rotary Club, there's a whole range of different ways in which you can establish entities. Satellite Club is the obvious. I don't think we should worry about the magic figure of 20. I think we should be going out, trying to recruit people and getting in a core nucleus. And I have to say, I said in my introductory talk, I fully agree with what Berman said a couple of weeks ago. If you get a group of 4 or 6 people, if they're keen, if they're enthusiastic, if they demonstrate what they are doing, what the benefits are doing, then they will grow. And let's not hesitate. Let's just go. And can I just pick up on the discussion we've had a moment ago? I think that we need to be looking at all sorts of different approaches to membership. One of the options is cause-based clubs. I mean, Robert was quite rightly talking about an interest-based club, people who are interested in public speaking. But if there's a group of people who are particularly committed to a cause, get them together. Now, if there are not 20 of them, get them as a satellite. And I think that although we've always traditionally worked on member against member, as we get older, our circle of contacts gets smaller, our contact with the potential recruitment group is less. And so we need to be looking at all sorts of different approaches and all sorts of different solutions. I think diversity applies to our membership, diversity applies to how we structure our membership.
Great. Just on the just so that we sort of cover it, I think on the Rotaract side, then there were two clubs in Norwich, one at the UEA and one in Norwich, and the question was why were they allowed to fail? But I think actually perhaps what we've talked about is having somebody from a district point of view overseeing that might be the answer. Is would you agree with that, Robin, and then DG?
Well, yeah, certainly everything we do needs a champion. So you're absolutely correct. Am I now being heard?
Yes.
You are.
Yes. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. It does need a champion. Interestingly, and if I may, I'll stay on Rotaract clubs for a moment. We rightly talk about satellite clubs with different interests. Most of those or many of them may be younger people. We don't necessarily, do we, have to steer them towards being a satellite Rotary club. They can become a Rotaract club, which would then draw them into our system of bringing people on. So I think that's terribly important as well. But going back to the original thing, yes, everything needs a champion. If there isn't a champion to fight the corner, it'll die.
Yeah, and that's also why the exec believes we need to have a voice from Rotaract on our district exec, because otherwise we won't have an understanding of what their needs are, and that is probably a problem we've had in the past. I think that the lack of an alumni has not helped, because some of these Rotaractors that have gone back into their different parts of Great Britain, maybe with their career changes, etc. We've lost touch with them. And yet one of the advantages of membership that I've noticed and think we can expand is where a Rotarian left, maybe because they've moved away. Now the E-Club is a good example of where when they meet up, they've got somebody from Kenya. Well, when we think about it, we know who he is because he was in our district team. He was the foundation chair before Derek took over. So in a way, he's now still in touch with the E-Club, and of course through them with us in District 1080. And so we can expand that. I mean, I can think in my own club, where somebody left the club because his wife was very ill and needed a huge amount of care, and now things are much better. And I can see there's an opportunity there, this person coming back into our club. And I think all clubs, part of their action plan needs to be looking at where the opportunities are, look at the membership they've had, their own alumni, look at young people. Is there a group of young people that could start a Rotaract club? I know somebody in Kings Lynn is looking at finding a new club to look at the diversity of the kind of population in that part of the world. It goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And one thing that Holger mentioned, which I think I can share with you, and I hadn't written in my program before, was that he believes every club should once a year hold a minimum of one strategic club meeting. So look at where they are in their plan, or have they got a plan? And I would suggest if your club hasn't got a plan, start with a simple one. Start with the one that we've offered to you, because it covers so many things. Don't try and do everything. Do what you think you can succeed in, and do what suits best your club and the community you work in.
Jonathan, can I just come in on that bit about Rotaract? I think one of the things that has happened with Rotaract is, same as with Rotary clubs. Rotaract clubs have been a group of friends, and sometimes they haven't brought new people in, so they've all just gently aged at the same time, like familiar story for a lot of our Rotary clubs. And then they reach 30, and then they fall off the edge, and an awful lot of them don't join or have not joined Rotary. Now, as of next week, the 30 age limit of Rotaract disappears. It's still intended that Rotaract clubs will be younger people, but they don't have to leave at 30. So as clubs, or as the district, mentors, monitors, helps without interfering, helps Rotaract clubs. If the people start to grow a little older and maybe there starts to be a disconnect, then maybe they just want to float off and either become a satellite club of a Rotary club, or, as Robin correctly suggests, another Rotaract club. I think we just need to keep a whole different range of we need to be very flexible, a whole different range of options, a whole different range of opportunities to stay in membership.
Thank you, Tom.
Right. We're starting to get to the end of the time, DG. Just sort of one more question, and I know there's a couple of our panelists would like to sort of finish with a couple of comments as well. So I'm aware of those, but I guess the last sort of question is just around technology and the use of technology and what we've learned. And I would probably say from a public image point of view, you know, this gives us so many more opportunities to reach people and get the message out there. Going back to what we were talking about in terms of leadership roles and succession, you know, for me, you know, working full time, you know, there's so much more flexibility with Rotary and working in a working environment as well that this gives. And you know, I've always worked on the basis that if you want an organization, you know, for retired people, have it run by retired people. If you want it for working people, then you know you need working people helping to run it as well. So you know, this gives us great opportunities, and they're not really questions. Well, there was a question about supporting a virtual education teaching center in Africa, and actually the RE Club of Innovation are looking at that as well. So I won't really push that anymore, other than to say that in the chat they've started talking to each other, and it looks as though that's a project that they might take further forward. But Robert might be interested in. Just before Keith talks about the environment, I just there was just one sort of last comment perhaps from Robert about Darfur and your Darfur project. If you unmute yourself, Robert.
Unmute.
Sorry about that. We launched the Darfur project in May. 7 clubs have given us money, totaling about just over £1,700. We're working with the charity Kids for Kids. We really love more and more clubs to come on board. Africa is, especially Darfur, is a real bad area at the moment. Lots of other problems, malnutrition. I could go on, but just basically 5 bars of soup for an average family of 6 people would get you through the first wave of the virus. So please, clubs, it's really another request for you to come on board on this. You can get all the information by going look at the June edition of the 1080 News, and we'd love to have you on board. The other thing is, again, international chair. I'm coming up to my last year. So as Jonathan and Ian has said, we need new people to come in. I was asked to come on this role, which I did, but we need new blood, so please come back. Last thing is, nothing to do with international. Clubs, please consider gift aid. My club is now donating the money we would spend on meals into our charity account. That can be gift aided. Lots of clubs are not doing it. Some are. It's a real lifeline if your funds are low. So please consider it. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, DG. Thank you.
Is it Keith now?
Yes, I would like to just pick up on what Tom said about this new exciting development of a 7th area of focus. And that will mean that for the first time, we could actually have projects, say in Africa, trying to promote solar energy or whatever like that, focusing primarily on the environment. And there's another interesting thing, which through the Environment and Sustainability Rotary Action Group, of which I'm a director, that in fact we're looking to try to actually develop an offset fund so that people who often fly overseas feel they would like to contribute to the environment, whether they're Rotarians or not. And we've already started to build up a fund here, which would be dedicated to such projects. So it's an additional way of getting information and funding for such projects. And as a result of this, I can see the work of our work with ESRAG increasing. And I would therefore encourage each club perhaps to have one member joining ESRAG so that you can actually tap into the latest developments that are occurring.
Thank you, Keith. Ian, have we?
Yeah, I think we're down on the questions. I think Derek would like to just recap just before we finish.
Yes, thank you, Ian. Thank you, DG. Just a quick recap on the presentation I gave earlier on. Our fundraising is not as good as it should be. The amount of money we have in the district fund is insufficient for what I anticipate to be our demand this coming year. So I ask clubs to think about their giving to foundation when they do fundraising events. One possibility is for them to give a small amount of the money raised, where it's for another purpose, give a small amount to foundation. And I think that if we were able to do that across the district, then our funds would build up quite quickly. So thank you, Ian. Thank you.
I think Robin is champing at the bit.
Yes, indeed. I did want to just round up on with youth services, but I think we should say, in view of everything that's said, younger people. So younger people. Unfortunately, our activities are severely curtailed by COVID-19. And we do have many competitions and programs. What I will be doing following this is putting together a fact sheet of all 15 activities that are available, with the lead's name and contact details. Also an update on any finals and generally activities. The last thing I would like to say is, so often we talk about schools and colleges, maybe unis, as being our only source of young people. But in fact, as I found in Ryla, that even when I went along to the boxing club, even they will come on board and we can get these people, lifesavers, the carers, all of these are potential people that we should be looking at, especially with the theming of satellite clubs. So thank you very much. Thank you for excellent assembly, and I look forward to hearing from everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we've got one person that's done a lot of work who's not actually. Can we ask Anne to join us? Is that possible? Ian, can we see?
I'm sure she can. Yeah, here she comes.
Yeah. Hello, Anne. Not aloha, but hello, Anne. I couldn't resist surprising you to just come and say a few words, because you've been brilliant. You've been behind the scenes, and your team, which Ian and I are part of, have been working on this for quite a long time. And to go from the planning for the April the 25th to where we are today. And I want to thank you, Anne, for what you've done. But is there anything you'd like to say about the leadership and training team, and so you can have a voice on this occasion?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I'd just like to say and thank my team for the work that they've put in as well with us all on this, that we've come from the start of lockdown to now to produce this virtual online assembly with the new format, and to thank everybody who's been dialing in every week, and also who's been using the information and sharing it, because that's where this sort of technology comes into force, is the scale of how many people you can actually reach through it. So looking forward to carrying on looking at how we use it and leverage it going forward. Okay,
and thank you very much indeed, Anne. So I think if this is the time to say some final thanks. I mean, I speak to, of course, everybody that has attended or subsequently watches this. I'd like to thank you all. And I'd also like to give a great thanks to all those club presidents who are about to come to the end of their year of service. And also all the best wishes to their successors, the new presidents that will arrive over the next week or so. And I understand you won't be able to do many formal handovers as such, but that can happen, the party can happen when you can. So good luck with your future, the new presidents coming in. And for anybody in all the clubs, please remember we are a team of support. We are, okay, the exec, we are what we are. But here, all of us, including Tom, are here to support every Rotarian. And so please don't be afraid to come towards any of us if we want some support. And equally, if you've got some great ideas, because those of us on the panel won't have all the best ideas, I'm sure some great ideas can come from you. And a special thanks, of course, to our Rotary Great Britain and Ireland incoming president, Tom Griffin. And I believe all of us in 1080, of course, because you are our man, would wish you the very best success in this incoming year. So basically, thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Well done, Jonathan.
Well done, Tom. Thank you.